All right, let's jump into the actual analysis a little bit of the data in terms of property characteristics. So remember, one of the first questions we need to tackle is what's the relationship between the ratings and the house prices? So we start with just the summary description of how the rated homes compare to unrated homes. And later we'll take a look at various gradations of ratings. But for now, let's just look at unrated versus rated to understand what we have in our data in particular. Again, homes rated between 2013 and 2017. A little bit about this data set. You'll see the number of observations there. We did decide to do a sample because we paired this data with the data we received from RESNET and the Department of Energy with property records data as well as credit bureau data. And in order to make sure that we had a nice de-identified data set, we went with a sample so that we could receive detailed credit attributes as well. The sample for RESNET is a 1 out of 11 for the original data set and a 1 out of 10 sample for the Department of Energy data set. For the unrated homes, we wanted to get other homes that were in the same census tract as one of the rated homes. So we started with the location of the rated homes and identified unrated homes that were in the same census tract so that we would have something to compare them to that had not been rated in our data set. Okay? And we actually obtained 5, you can see the number there is much larger. We obtained 5 unrated homes for each rated home from the same census tract. Now to compare the data a little bit, you can see that the prices, the first column there, we have the price and a couple of property characteristics for the unrated homes. The RESNET rated home price at $320,000 is higher than the RESNET rated home price is higher than the unrated home price, right? They tend to sell for more, but they're also larger in square footage, and they tend to be newer built homes. So that's the difference between that, between the RESNET and the unrated homes. So when we do the analysis for the RESNET rated homes, we need to keep in mind that the properties themselves are different compared to the unrated homes. So our analysis needs to account for that. Similarly, for the Department of Energy rated homes, using that rating scale, the prices are more similar, but the DOE rated homes are actually smaller and older on average. So that's kind of interesting too. It could be that they have a comparable price, which means that it could be even better once we control for potentially those differences in characteristics. So again, we have to be careful when we do the analysis to take those additional property characteristics into consideration. And we do that with a statistical analysis of a regression framework, where we look at the price that we put in log form of the home at the time that it's sold. We're going to have to talk a little bit about why we're showing the RESNET results as opposed to Department of Energy results here in just a moment. And when we look at the RESNET rated homes, the first column there is if we just include controls for the property characteristics, such that we had on the prior slide of square footage, acreage, age of property, and some geography and time controls, we see premium. We do see a premium of 4.3%. We did decide to go a step further just to be a little bit more robust, or to make sure that our result was robust in terms of having a price premium, where we actually match. We use a propensity score matching technique to further match the RESNET rated homes with unrated homes that were similar in characteristics, so that we could see to make sure that we had a better match to control for things that whether or not those characteristics themselves could have been the reason why or been associated with having received a rating in the first place, right? You could say, well, that's just because all of the homes that are larger are the ones that got rated in the first place. So we do this additional step to try to address that concern. We do find that when we do the additional step, we still have a price premium. That's the 2.7% in the second column. It is still statistically significant, So we believe our results are robust, at least to the extent of being able to say that there is a price premium associated with having a rated home. Why do we not show the Department of Energy results here for the rated homes? I have some more information about the Department of Energy rated homes in just a second. That does not mean that those homes do not have price premiums associated with it, but just that the data set that we have, again, remember that the people who tend to select the Department of Energy rating are more likely to stay in their homes because they're interested in audits for their own use a lot of times in the data set we have. And therefore, we're not observing a lot of sales transactions for that Department of Energy rated, for those Department of Energy HES rated properties in this particular time period. That may change in the future as that rating system is being adopted out west by certain jurisdictions for more transparency in those markets. So that's why it does not mean that the DOE rated homes would not have similar premiums associated with them. Okay. Now, that was just whether or not, this prior slide was just showing us whether or not having a rating compared to not having a rating seemed to have a premium associated with it. That could be a signal to the market of something better because the RESNET rated homes could be just better homes still in ways that we haven't been able to fully capture in our analysis, or it could be that there really is additional information here. This slide is about seeing if there really is additional information in the rating itself. And we believe that there is based on this information. What we do in this slide, in this analysis, is we restrict the analysis to only the homes that have the RESNET rating, the HERS index rating. And we compare what those actual values are for the rating to see if better ratings are associated with higher prices. And what we find is even if whether we do a model where we're just looking at the value, kind of a modified value of the index, or we group them into quartiles of, the best fourth and then the next best fourth and so on, do we see premiums associated with that? And we do, right? So the way to read the first column there is for every 10-point improvement in the score value itself, the price increases by 2%. The second column here, we're comparing these higher, better quartiles to the lowest quartile, and we would compare the higher quartiles to the lowest quartile or the first quartile. We're seeing that each quartile is associated with a house price premium that is, higher the better the quartile, right? So 3% for that second one compared to the first quartile, all the way up to 5% for that fourth best quartile compared to the first quartile. Okay. Now, loan performance, we teed it up early to say that with loan performance, in terms of mortgage default, our results were a little more nuanced, right? We were not able to demonstrate on average that there was a better loan performance associated with rated homes. So the results are, let's kind of walk through the story here a little bit. And here we do have some of the DOE related information for us as well. Let's start with the RESNET rated homes. I'm going to walk you through this table to demonstrate that RESNET rated homes tend to have better loan profiles in addition to having what may appear to be the lower delinquency rate. In this example, we're using, we provide the delinquency rates of whether or not the loan has gone 60 days or 90 days delinquent in the second row at any point in time that we're able to observe, right? So if we just look at the first two columns, the way to read this, for the unrated homes, having ever gone delinquent in the first, having ever gone 60 days delinquent is 3.6%. So 3.6% of our unrated sample has gone 60 days delinquent, compared to 3.1% of the RESNET sample. Ever 90 days delinquent, having gone 90 days delinquent occurs less frequently, 2.5% for the unrated homes and 2.3% for the RESNET rated homes. And similar patterns are observable when we look at whether or not we're talking about the better quartile. So remember Q1 to quartile 1 to quartile 4, where quartile 4 is the best quartile. It also has the lowest delinquency rates associated with it in the first 2 rows. Now, so that's the lower, so the better the rating, the lower the delinquency rate. And having a rating is associated with lower delinquency rates. But that's before I've controlled for any of the characteristics associated with the homes, neighborhoods, or the individuals that have secured the loans. So take a look at things like the credit scores. For instance, we see that if we look at better, as we follow along from quartile 1 to quartile 4, better rated homes also have the higher credit scores, lower loan to value ratios, higher UPB, which is unpaid principal balances or dollar amounts associated with them, higher incomes, and tend to be in neighborhoods with the higher median incomes. So of course, we need to make sure that if we observe the lower delinquency rate, that lower delinquency rate is not just a function of those characteristics that we have highlighted there, but it is actually associated with the rating values or something about the ratings themselves. Okay. For the Department of Energy rating system, we have a slightly different story. Again, these loan profiles tend to be more diversified. I believe that's a nature of the, partly due to the fact that we just have a more diverse group of individuals and homes that are being rated. They tend to be older. The reason for getting a rating for this type of rating is more varied. So the story is not quite as crisp when we do it for the DOE rated homes. Better ratings are not clearly associated with better loan performance when we look at the DOE rated homes. In this table is the same as before in terms of its interpretation of the columns. We do want to point out that we do have fewer observations for the Department of Energy rating that we have here. We have fewer observations, so we have to just kind of be aware of that. We found it interesting that we see in better rated homes, we do have more government loans represented. Percentage of government loans is higher. But we actually see that the debt to income ratios are lower as well. So there's just kind of a mixed story here. Now, what we do in the analysis for the loan performance story, I don't want to put too many more charts in front of you. I'll just give you the main story here. We put it in another regression framework. For those of you who want the details, again, it's in the paper, the white paper that's online. If you want to care right now, it's a logistic regression model, all that good stuff. So it's got all that rigor. And we include controls for the characteristics that you just observed on the prior slides. When we do that, neither sample of rated homes are found to perform different from the unrated homes, right? So there's basically that value that's associated with those ratings is indistinguishable from zero from a statistical perspective, once we take into consideration these characteristics. The different levels of efficiency when we go across the quartiles is not really consistently found to be associated with the mortgage performance. But I do have another table I want to show you in a second here that does demonstrate the performance lift that we seem to have associated with, that we do have associated with the higher debt to income ratio bucket or group there for the greater than 45%. To motivate that, instead of showing you the statistical results in their gory details, let's just start with a chart to motivate the story a little bit. Again, we did this for having a 60-day delinquency, and we repeated the process for 90-day delinquencies. And if you look at this chart, the way to read it is that we could compare in this particular example, the RESNET-rated homes to the non-RESNET rated homes in the bottom panel. So basically you go row by row comparing from the top chart to the bottom chart. And what we're finding here, some of the highlighted in yellow portions, for instance, consistent story. When I look at the 45% and higher DTI, debt to income ratios, when we're in the RESNET rated space, those delinquency rates, in the total, if I just go all the way to the end, it's 2.6% that go ever 60 days delinquent. But we're in the non-RESNET space, it's 4.2% that ever go 60 days delinquent. And that's consistent for the other buckets across the top are the loan to value ratios. So it's consistent with whether we're talking about 80%, different values, even above 95%, that pattern appears consistent in just this summary chart. We then decided to take a look at breaking out this 45 and above group and looking specifically at that group to see if this would hold up in a statistical analysis with all of the other controls that we again showed you in the prior slides, and it does. So we do find that this particular summary information here holds up in a regression framework as well.
Thanks for watching. Please continue to watch the next part of the session to complete the course and get your continuing education credits. Be sure to check out all of our courses available online that you can watch anytime and anywhere to pick up your CEUs. Before you go, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube to get weekly updates and stay up to date on green building science courses, webinars, and home tours. Thanks again.